Hello, Soul Searchers. Today's tarot tale is coming from the Rare Dragon Tarot. This is a tarot that I got off of Etsy, so I have no affiliate code, but I will definitely link the shop down below. Definitely go support them if you like dragons and you want to, support dope people all over the world. So, let's just ground down a little bit. Your girl is a little wine drunk, I'm not going to lie. Oro had had enough. Oro was one of the few dragons left who still resided in the ocean. They called him a Leviathan. The few flying dragons that he had spoken to over the course of his years. He didn't know what that meant, but he knew he was basically alone. He had never met another dragon like himself. From the deep depths of the ocean, it gave him great comfort to see humans and land dragons and air dragons all getting along. He felt like he was a part of the camaraderie, even though he was leagues under the sea. And yet he saw everything. He saw when the humans began erecting monuments to the dragons, statues, works of art. Unfortunately, Oro didn't understand the concept of art and statue. And so when he saw a dragon perched on top of a pillar in stone, or a dragon with its wings spread in marble, he didn't understand that these were representatives, not real dragons. He thought that some harm must be befalling his kind because they were so still. Sure, he still saw a couple dragons flying every now and then, or a couple dragons playing on the beach, but he couldn't get those statues out of his mind. He thought about it and thought about it and thought about it some more until finally he couldn't take it. He didn't know exactly what was going on, but he knew that his kind were being harmed by people who he once called friend. And so, this Leviathan, Oro, decided that he would take vengeance on the next human he saw without remorse. It didn't take long. While his kind were being turned to stone, humans were thriving. And so, a day after determining that his kind were being harmed, a ship sailed right over his head with the audacity that would beget a people who would turn animals to stone. He didn't hesitate. He tossed the ship on its side. Humans knew that a Leviathan, at least one, still lived in the ocean. But he was always friendly. They were always giving him offerings of flowers and fish, birds, just to keep the peace. And so although they knew that Oro was there. They were not at all expecting the attack. The ship was flipped upside down in the ocean, and people tumbled out like bits of tuna from a can. Oro didn't waste any time. He had already decided that these people were harmful, a danger to his kind, and he gobbled up as many as he could find within his sight. A few managed to make it to shore, and once he was done with his meal in the ocean, he followed them. They were already in the sand, and although he was better in the ocean, Oro was still able to walk on sand, just not as effectively as he could swim in the water. Luckily, because of his size, he didn't even have to get on the sand yet. He lifted up out of the ocean and roared the loudest he had roared in a long time, sending tufts of fire and smoke into the air. The few humans who were on the sand ran, but one caught his attention. This one ran, but not to run away. He ran for a bow and arrow. And as Oro finished his deep roar that had been hidden within him for millennia, it seemed, this soldier lifted his bow and arrow and aimed right at the space between Oro's eyes. Oro roared again, preparing his fire, preparing to burn the one person who had challenged him in his entire life. And then he heard her. There was another dragon nearby. He heard her in his head. "Please stop. He's my friend. Why do you do this? How could you be friends with monsters like this?" "What monsters do you speak of? The only monster here is you, killing people for no reason." "No reason? Look around. Look at what these people have done to our kind. They don't move. They're just stuck. Stuck in stone." "You fool," she said. "Those are statues. Art. They're built in reverence of us. They're not actual dragons turned to stone, but stone turned into dragons. You have committed multiple murders for no reason." Before he could respond, before he could even feel 2 seconds of remorse, there was an arrow in his eye, and then another, and then one shot straight down his throat. And that was the end of Oro. To this day, it's said that that simple misunderstanding is why humans began turning on dragons. But of course, there's 2 sides to every story, so who knows? Perhaps it was the humans who offended first. Literally just came up with that off the dome, per usual. I'm also just seeing, I just want to make sure that was right. Yeah, I just saw 1, 2, 3, 4 on the camera, which is a very progressive number. So whoever's tapped into this, you're progressing, boo. You guys know I like to do the tarot tale, and then I like to kind of talk through the cards to see like why I went there with the tarot tale, because I feel like it does kind of help with my understanding of tarot. I don't know why I immediately knew that the problem was going to be in the middle. And I guess that is kind of how a lot of tarot spreads go, right? You have the current energy, the challenge, and then the advice. And Ten of Swords is kind of showing up in the advice portion, which is interesting, but it was the Four of Swords that I knew would be the challenge. And Four of Swords is all about rest. So I was like, I can't make rest challenging. I mean, I guess I could, but it was more so the imagery that stuck out to me. And especially with the viciousness of the Eight of Wands and the present energy, I was like, oh, that's obvious. He thinks that his kind, his fellow dragons, are being turned into stone. And so he retaliates. It was really interesting too, because even before I did this tarot tale, of course, I cleansed the deck. And this Ten of Swords was really interesting to me because the tens in this deck don't have like 10 of their suit. So whereas you will see 5 swords on the 5 of swords or 6 swords on the 6 of swords, this card, the 10 of swords, does not have 10 swords on it. And I feel like that's important because the only swords, quote unquote, if you want to call it that, are the dragon's talons. And that tells me that you are the only thing, or that this dragon, Oro, was the only thing that could get in his way. He was the only thing that could bring him to ruin. Because Ten of Swords does talk about ruin. It's kind of low-key, quote-unquote, the worst card in the tarot. Best thing about it is that it can't get worse, supposedly. And so, yeah, seeing the Ten of Swords, it's like, that's kind of what let me know that this was a misunderstanding. Like, he's seeing the Four of Swords, he's seeing the statue and the art made in homage to his kind, but with the Eight of Wands, he's obviously not taking kindly to it because, of course, he's under the ocean. He doesn't see everything that's going on. He sees enough to know the daily ins and outs, but he doesn't see necessarily when these things are being made, because presumably they're being made inside and then brought outside into his view. And so, yeah, it was very obvious to me that because of the Ten of Swords, it's not the case that humans were actually committing this atrocity, but that he was assuming that, and it was going to lead to his own downfall. And it makes sense as well with the bottom of the deck, which is the Infanta of Swords, because as you can see on the card, this is a baby. So this is a basically what's traditionally known as the Page of Swords, but it's depicted as a baby on this card. And so it is kind of that energy of needing to know how to use the information that you're given, but also learning to ask questions, learning to think about things in a different way, learning to consider what you may not know. And, you know, as the page, as the youngest in the court, it will be new for you. It will be challenging. It would be new for Oro. It would be challenging for him, but that's still kind of a lesson that he has to learn, and unfortunately he learned it in the harder way. Yeah, and then we also have Temperance over here, which kind of came out like as I was shuffling, but it fell on the floor. Which is why it's not technically a part of the story, but it gave me some insight. So this is Temperance reversed. Temperance talks about patience, alchemy, patience and alchemy, because alchemy takes patience. It takes patience to make gold out of lead, okay? We're still not even sure if it's possible, but that's what the alchemists were trying to do, okay? They were trying to make gold out of any mineral, element, etc. that existed. Like, how can we get to gold from here? And yeah, that's going to take some patience. So with it being reversed, there was just this message / energy of there are assumptions being made, especially with that Eight of Wands as well, because Eight of Wands talks about fast messaging, a lot of things focused in the same direction, and apparently in this Eight of Wands, not necessarily for everyone's benefit. And so with the the Temperance card reversed as well. That just lets me know that there is very fast energy, not a lot of thought. And that would probably be to a detriment. Because for all of the difficulty of Temperance, you can see the validity in it. You can see the validity in slowing down and taking your time. You can see the validity. If Oro had done this, he might not have been shot. He might not have killed so many people for no reason, you know? So, yeah. Also, another thing that I am just now noticing is that we have nothing but swords and wands out in this reading. And both of those are very fast-paced energies. Those are the fastest energies of the tarot. Cups and Pentacles are the slower ones. So for those to come out and then Temperance reversed, it's, yeah. It's just very fast-paced and things being missed. So that is how I got to the story I got to with this tarot deck. I hope it makes sense. Definitely let me know your thoughts or how you would have interpreted these cards into a story. But yeah, that's all I have for you guys today. Of course, please check out the seller. Even if you're not into dragons, they have so many other decks and products on their site. So definitely go check them out. It will be linked in the description box. But that's all I have for you today. Thank you guys for tuning in, and I will see you in the next video.